Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, this is David Cerns from Haley Marketing Group, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce someone who most of you probably already know. We have Robin Mee, the president and founder of Mee Derby. Robin is going to be talking to us about one of the really critical issues that I know lots of our clients are facing, which is how do we hire good internal people? And if there's somebody who knows how to hire for the staffing industry, it is definitely Robin. So Robin, I'm going to change the keyboard and mouse over to you, and you can take it away.
All right, good afternoon and welcome. I'm really excited to be talking to you guys today on a subject that I talk about all day, every day, and have for 27 years now, and that is creating a recruiting strategy and best practices for hiring and retaining internal talent for your staffing companies. So I am founder and president of Mee Derby, and we're an executive search firm that places managers and executives in staffing companies, and we've been doing it for a long time. I've got this amazing team of 9. We work nationally. We work with companies of all sizes, from one-office startups to the biggest multinational staffing companies in the world. We work nationally, and we also work across all verticals. So from admin, clerical, light industrial, professional services, you name it. There's really a staffing company out there for everything, and they represent Mee Derby's clients. And of course, staffing professionals represent Mee Derby's candidates. And so I'm here today to really give you some of the best practices and some of the benefit of my years of experience in talking again to hundreds of candidates weekly and thousands of companies over the course of the time that we've been doing work for the staffing industry. So let's jump in. All right, I'm playing with my computer here and trying to get into. Okay, David, I might need your help. Let's see. Hold on. Nope, went the wrong direction. Sorry, you guys. Okay, let's start off with strategy. You need a roadmap. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't have a plan in place. And in reality, a strategy is something that we apply to a lot of things in our business, and we need a strategy to apply to hiring for the staffing industry, or hiring for your company. It really doesn't matter how big or small of a company you've got. A strategy is something that gets you going in the right direction and kind of keeps you in check. As I mentioned, I run a 9-person staffing company, but we have a hiring strategy, and frankly, fourth quarter is the best time to be really thinking about what your strategy is going to look like for the next 12 months, or what 2017 strategy is going to look like. So who creates strategy? Who's involved with it? Well, as an owner of a small staffing company, I lead that charge. But I also have got a recruiting manager and I've got an operations manager who I tap into their expertise, their advice, their support, and they help me in creating that strategy and then also implementing the strategy. So one of the things that we do fourth quarter is everybody in the organization gets a document to talk about, kind of self-analysis of what they accomplished this year, where they've been, where they want to go, what my company, what I can provide them in terms of resources to help get them there. And it also gives me and my team an opportunity, again, that management team, to determine, do we need to make any changes with the existing staff? Do we need to assess, well, we do need to assess what our hiring strategy is going to be for the next year. And instead of being so reactive, which so many of us are, getting proactive around hiring for our internal talent. Sorry, guys. Okay. There's 2 different buckets of people that we are going to be attracting in our hiring strategy for our companies. And one is going to be hiring people from outside the industry. And the other is going to be hiring from inside the industry. But I'm going to talk about hiring from outside of the industry first, because this is an area where we all know that there's a war for talent in the staffing industry. We all know that there are, it's full employment, everybody is working, and there aren't enough people with staffing industry expertise and experience for everybody to hire. And this became an issue that was raised within the American Staffing Association several years ago under the leadership of Dan Campbell, who was the chairperson of ASA at the time. And he realized that there are companies that are doing a really good job of hiring from outside the industry, and there are companies that don't know a thing about it. So a task force was put together called Staffing as a Career. And Staffing as a Career .net is the website that you can begin to look and see what ASA is doing. I was asked to chair that task force, and we are really ending our second year. And the whole goal is to help companies that don't know how to hire from outside the industry benefit from the advice and the guidance of companies that are doing a really good job of hiring from outside the industry. So a couple of different suggestions that I'm going to make to you, and one is that there's kind of two populations of people. There's the recent college grad, and then there are professionals from other industries. The recent college grad population is one that more and more companies are kind of embracing, and it starts with looking at your local universities or even community colleges and picking one or two or three, depending on the size of your organization, depending on your geography. Start small. Develop a relationship with really two different people in the organization. One is the career counseling center, and the other is possibly, and this is something to consider, the business school. And I say that because this is where the majority of ASA members who are doing this kind of college recruiting, they are targeting the business school, and whenever possible, they're targeting programs that have got sales programs within the business school. Because in reality, the staffing industry, whether you're recruiting or sales, is a sales-driven industry, and it is that our members, our ASA members, have found that is the right population of individuals. So starting small, developing relationships, getting involved with job fairs and doing some things like mock interviews, getting visibility on that college campus, and working with the Career Center and possibly that business school to begin to identify targeted people, targeted student population that may be interested in coming to work for your organization. That requires putting together a training program, for somebody that doesn't have industry experience. And there are lots of resources to do that. And again, I look to ASA and Haley Marketing, who brings in a lot of trainers for this event, Lunch with Haley. You recently have Scott Love. Scott is a trainer who has done a lot of work directly with staffing companies, but also with ASA. ASA has got a whole series of webinars, actually. Scott did a sales series that is archived. So anybody can go in and tap into those archived training classes. Staffing Trainer has got some great training for people who don't have industry experience. Tom Erb, Scott Winthrop. Staffing World is next week at the ASA. It's the largest gathering of staff professionals in the country. And there is no better place to find trainers for the industry than at Staffing World. And next week, ASA is going to be, there will be an announcement. And the announcement is around a new training program. Career Builder is gone into partnership with Capella Learning Solutions to create a junior staffing recruiter training that ASA was instrumental in putting together. And that's all I'm going to say about that program. You stay tuned. There will be announcements next week and press releases about this program, but it is in response to the need for more training and more people that don't have industry experience coming into our business. A lot of companies that are doing a lot of college recruiting are looking at and do have internship programs. These are internship programs, again, that are tapping that recent college students. And some of those internship programs are run throughout the entire course of the year. Some are just summer programs. Staffing is a career.net, and actually, if you're an ASA member, there's a promoting the profession area within the password protected area that will give you some additional resources on how to put training programs together, how to put internship programs together. So the student is just one population. The other population are professionals from other industries. And, historically, there have been some groups of people, people that sell business-to-business services, people who are coming out of, there are some stereotypic companies. Enterprise Rent-A-Car has been a company that lots of staffing companies have recruited out of. I actually had a company recently that said, a staffing company that said, we like to hire people from mattress discounters. We find they are really good sales people. I think a lot of companies also tap into people in hospitality, people in retail, as feeder areas for our industry. But I do think that more and more people, the staffing industry and recruiting in general, people know what recruiters are. Students know what recruiters are. And there are more people, I think, coming out of school today who are thinking about careers in recruiting, which really is careers in staffing, than ever before. So I think once you start looking at this population or even thinking about it, you start realizing there's so much opportunity here that even myself, again, run a small company. 2 years ago, I needed to hire a social media person to build a social media program for Mee Derby. I decided to look at a recent college graduate. 2 years in, I hired that person, trained her on her industry. She brought the social media skills. It's been a win-win for everyone. So that's one population, hiring from outside the industry. Oops, sorry, guys. But hiring from inside the industry is what most companies go to. I don't care what size company they are. At least at Mee Derby, when somebody comes to Mee Derby, they're looking to hire somebody from inside the industry. But there are pros and cons. And the pros are you are hiring somebody that knows they like the industry or loves the industry or is passionate about the industry. You can ask them very specific questions in the interview about their work and they can respond accordingly. They should be able to talk about their track record of success and put it into metrics that you understand and that they're communicating around what they love about what they do. You think it's going to be an easier fit and a faster hire, and sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. There are cons. And one of the big cons is hiring somebody that has got a non-compete or a non-solicitation, and most companies in our industry do. And so they are serious documents that need serious consideration. And a non-compete is a document that is signed often by staffing professionals. It will keep them from working within a 50-mile radius of their current employer. It should keep them out of their particular staffing vertical. Sometimes they can be very broad. So, for example, if somebody's an IT recruiter, it should keep them from, the language should say that they wouldn't be able to work in IT, should not keep them from working in accounting and finance or another vertical. And that is one way of hiring an industry experienced person and getting around a non-compete is putting them in a different vertical of staffing. A non-solicitation is like a non-compete, but it doesn't keep the person from working in the industry. The non-solicitation will keep them from hiring people that they work with, so recruiting anybody out of their current employer. It's really, the non-solicitation is meant to protect the business of the company in which they're leaving. And I think that's a very fair employment agreement. It is often something that we see more non-solicit in the professional services vertical. We see more non-compete in, well, we see non-compete everywhere, but I just see more non-solicitations in professional services verticals. Mee Derby has a non-solicit, not a non-compete. It is a fair document, but you do need to do some real due diligence when you're looking at hiring people with industry experience around what their non-compete and or their non-solicitation looks like. Sorry. Okay. So we're going to jump into the meat of this this webinar today, and that's how to attract. What do we need to do? And frankly, I'm a huge believer that it starts with writing a good job description. But there are two different kinds of job descriptions out there. There are job descriptions that are marketing documents that are meant to be posted in a variety of places that we post jobs today. And then there is the internal job description, which I'm an advocate of the scorecard approach. I don't know if any of you have read, and if you haven't, I recommend taking a look at WHO, the AIM method for hiring. The authors of that book, Randy Street and Jeff Smart, spoke at Staffing World a couple of years ago. And their book is really a how-to. And one of their how to hire, how to interview, and they advocate the scorecard approach. So once I became introduced to the scorecard for a job description, the more excited I get. And several of our clients use the job scorecard approach to writing the internal job description. So the external job description is a marketing document. And LinkedIn has a very good job posting toolkit. The link is here. You have to go to the web, type in that link, and you have to put your name and your contact information so LinkedIn has captured that. But it is a toolkit that tells you how LinkedIn thinks the best way to write a job posting for the internet is. And I'll tell you, I think that they've done a lot of research in this area, and they've got a lot of good marketing tips, and I think this one is a great one. So basically, they're talking about the job for posting needs to be short, it needs to be concise, it needs to start with the top of the job description really showcasing the company's strengths and their goals in making this hire, and you want to put it in terms of the you. So the person that's looking at the job description is seeing themselves in the job. Are you a senior marketing executive? Are you a senior salesperson? Are you a world-class recruiter? And using the you words throughout the job so that the person, again, is seeing themselves in the position. So sell the company up top, sell some of the unique capabilities or characteristics of the organization. No more than 5 to 7 bullet points about the position itself, and then end with another strong why this company is a great company for you to consider joining. That's your external job posting. It is creating excitement, it is grabbing attention. That internal job description is the one that really you're going to probably spend more time on, because this is going to be a working document. It's going to be a tool for the individual. It should be detailed enough so the candidate, the person you're hiring, knows what the goals and objectives of the position are. So they know the purpose of the job, they know the results that are required or desired, they have an idea of the skills and the traits and the competencies required, they know the key responsibilities, they understand the company's core values, and embedded in this are going to be their goals, expectations, their KPIs. And so you can use this as an ongoing living document for coaching, performance evaluation. And by the way, these job descriptions are living, breathing documents, and they change and they need to evolve. Every time I go to consider hiring somebody for Mee Derby, I am rewriting the job description. And I'm rewriting really the one that's more of the, I'm rewriting both because things change and the way we all work changes over time. So please, I can't tell you how few companies have their job descriptions, whether they're for external posting or internal. Consider your job description. Creating a hiring pipeline is something that you do for your customers. You need to do it for yourself. You need to be your internal customer. And so a hiring pipeline is constantly developing relationships with people who you want to hire for your organization. And that's going to look different for the hiring from outside the industry than hiring inside the industry. I think the hiring pipeline is more for hiring inside the industry. But you know the kinds of positions that you're constantly recruiting for. And frankly, your team is probably interfacing with more candidates on a daily basis. So once you've created your hiring profile, that not even a scorecard really, but that external posting, you want to make sure you're communicating to your team. These are the kinds of people that we're looking to hire always. And we want to bring you in so you can help us create this hiring pipeline. You may want to consider employee referral bonuses so that they are, top of mind thinking about who's going to be my next coworker, or and in some cases they're thinking too about their friends or their alumni or their former coworkers. But get them involved with this hiring profile or hiring pipeline. And I've heard of some companies, and actually one of my recruiting manager in her last company, she was required once a month to be taking someone for lunch or a coffee, somebody that they were interested in hiring internally. And sometimes it takes really long-term recruiting of candidates before they're going to eventually make a job change. And when they do make that job change, you want them to be thinking of you. Because I'm of the opinion that everyone's going to make a job change at some point. So if everyone's going to make a job change at some point, you want them thinking about you when they're starting to think about a job change. And creating and managing and developing a hiring pipeline is really developing relationships and maintaining relationships with people who you would like to work for your organization. And then whole networking, get out of your own office, get out of your own organization, and go to, and I'm not saying go recruit at events, but do network at places that other people are going to be attending, like Chamber of Commerce or Rotary or community service, community organizations, professional organizations. And it's going to be different for that experienced candidate versus a non-experienced candidate. But it's an ongoing process. And then court those people. I mean, we put people before we really launched the social media initiative, on almost a weekly basis, we were sending out email blasts to really build engagement and awareness. And it wasn't just about, we have an opening and we're trying to recruit for this position, but it was about providing content and information that we think our candidates are going to be interested in. It's really about establishing a touch point and our subject matter expertise and connecting with people where they want to be connected. And for us, it's really developing those relationships and maintaining those relationships for the long term. So we use technology for as much as possible here at Mee Derby. And the applicant tracking system is kind of the beginning place to, I talked about developing relationships and maintaining relationships with those target people that you're interested in someday employing for your company. But you got to track that information, otherwise you'll lose that information. And so we've been committed to one applicant tracking system for 14 years. And you, I'm sure, have an ATS that you run your organization by. Or is there some way to segment off? I mean, you don't want your candidate pipeline for your internal hires to be visible for everybody in the organization, but there's got to be some way for you to be collecting information using technology so you can have a candidate record, a resume, notes of every time you've talked to that person, email, contact information, ways of being able to track over time these individuals that you are really targeting to someday hopefully employ for your company. And make sure that your job, your internal jobs, are posted on your website. Well, if you post your jobs to your website, I think most of the things staffing industry do these days, you want to have your internal jobs posted to your website too. Staffing companies are getting better and better at that, but I can't tell you how many staffing companies I go to and I go to find their internal jobs. There's no way for somebody who's external to the organization to be able to apply to internal positions. But post all your internal jobs on your website and cross-post them. I expect, well, I'll just say, Mee Derby uses Haley Marketing for our website. We have had a relationship with Haley for a long time, and they do other marketing support for our organization. And part of that is search engine optimization. So you want to make sure that your job, that your website has got a great SEO, and that includes those jobs so that when somebody, I mean, for Mee Derby, when somebody types looking for a job in the staffing industry, I want Mee Derby to pop up. And so you want to be thinking about not only candidates coming to your organization because you're going to place them in your clients, but also people that are going to be attracted to your organization because they are interested in a position in your company. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, really, creating touch points with, again, the old way, email blast, new way, social media, newsletters, and other, and I'm going to talk about social media next. Sorry, you guys, I'm sorry, I keep going the wrong direction. But recruiting is marketing, and marketing is branding, and it all happens online today. So how do you go to market? How do you present to the outside world on the internet? Well, it's huge. And you have to think about, you got to go where your candidates are. And staffing, LinkedIn tells us that there are over 700,000 staffing industry professionals, people who self-identify as staffing and recruiting on LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is probably the best single place to be developing relationships with people in the staffing industry. So Mee Derby, not only have we had LinkedIn recruiter licenses for a long time, but we've invested in a LinkedIn talent solution. And the LinkedIn talent solution brings up a lot of things, but it also, there's 3 things on LinkedIn, and there's things that cost on LinkedIn. So let's talk about some of the 3 things. Having a great, and having all your staff have really dynamic employee pages, and just a personal profile page, then LinkedIn is really important. Then it's really important for them to be building their individual brand. And they build their individual brand by doing really robust, good status updates. And I'm not talking about posting jobs every day. I'm talking that are going to set them apart, that are going to establish their credibility in the marketplace. You're building your brand because, again, somebody's looking for a job in the staffing industry in your market, and you don't know them. You do want your company to sort of be top of mind. So how do you do that? You build engagement everywhere you can. And again, I think LinkedIn offers a lot of resources as it relates to the staffing industry. So everybody has a good profile page. Everybody's doing regular status updates. I like it every day. I do one every day. I encourage my staff to do one every day. Another free thing to do is have a really good career page. A career page is like your website on LinkedIn for your company. It is free. And you can begin to build followers. And you can begin to post, again, once you get going, our goal at Mee Derby is a daily post on our company page. And we're trying to get out way more content than we are posting jobs. You'll see some jobs on our page, but you will see way more content. And in some cases, we're writing that content. So that social media person that I hired at Richmond College Graduate 2 years ago, she's writing fresh content, probably one piece of content a week, and then, or maybe a little bit more, but then we're sharing content that we come across, and we're all inundated with information, and we have an idea of what's going to be important, or at least we know what we think is important to us. Well, I think the people that are following your company are going to find whatever you think is important also to be of interest. And if they're not interested in it, then they're not going to engage. But those two things on LinkedIn, all your employees having really good employee pages, and your company having a really strong career page begins to set the stage. And then you can add on additional things. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to post jobs. That costs. Run targeted ads. That costs. Own the profile page of all your employees if you're, the employer. That costs. But I believe that LinkedIn is the most robust place to be connecting with staffing industry professionals. Again, 700,000 of them on LinkedIn that are self-identified as staffing recruiting. But your social media plan is going to be multi-layered, and Twitter, huge, constant elevation of conversation around the relevance of Twitter as it relates to engagement in social media. Facebook, and I'm not talking about Facebook, your personal Facebook, I'm talking about having a company Facebook, and most people recommend using Facebook differently than LinkedIn. Facebook is a little more of the social piece and sharing some of the fun things your organization is doing. Sure, you're going to post some fun things, your community service activities, et cetera, on your LinkedIn company page and on your company website, but Facebook might be more candid company employee shots, again, things that are a little more human interest. So many places to post jobs on the internet, and you've got to figure out what's right for you. Obviously, there's job boards with Long-Term Career Builder and Dice for IT being some of the most prevalent, but there are hundreds of thousands, and lots are free. And depending on your ATS, again, we use full ones, our jobs get scraped on a daily basis and pushed out to Indeed and other places as well. But Craigslist, and I mean, lots of companies, and a lot of companies hired that recent college graduate, that junior staffing person by postings on Craigslist. And then, of course, your community, and this probably feeds into some of the recruiting you're doing for your customers, but certainly classified ads are very prevalent in certain markets, and companies are involved with various different kinds of community groups and organizations to constantly recruit. So you're constantly recruiting for your clients, you want to be constantly recruiting for your organization. Again, I'm going to tell you about LinkedIn has got another ebook, another tool called the Staffing Branding ebook. And this is 8 or 9 companies that have implemented good implemented strong social media programs. Most of them, if not all of them, include LinkedIn. Mee Derby is a company that is profiled in this ebook. Came out earlier this year, but it's a fantastic tool. It's free, and it gives you lots and lots of free ideas and not free ideas on ways to brand and market and build engagement and recruit and frankly sell all at the same time, because that's the opportunity that that the internet offers. Okay, the interview process. I don't know, I guess your big takeaway here is create an interview process and implement an interview process and try to be consistent with your interview process. You know, the first candidate should be having the same experience that the fifth candidate has, should have the same experience the 10th candidate has. Of course, the people will change and the dates and the times and all of that change. But having a methodology to your interview process is important for your internal hire. I'll tell you what Mee Derby does. And Mee Derby is just a small piece of what our clients do. But we do a 30-minute screen when we first talk to a candidate. And we need to make sure that we're going to be a good resource for that candidate, and we need to make sure that candidate's going to be a good potential candidate for Mee Derby. So the first 20 to 30-minute call is just establishing that, and it's no more than 5 to 10 questions. And if we have a position for that person, we then ask them for an hour interview. And that hour interview is going to, at that point, we will have a resume, and we will do a combination of a chronologic and an accomplishment-based interview. So who and top grading, which is another book, that book by Brad Smart, and that has been out longer, but it's a similar methodology. And I believe that the author of Who also was one of the co-authors of Top Grading, but don't quote me on that. But they have got some established interview methodology recommended, and I think bits and pieces of all, but with chronological, I actually like to go back and ask. I want the Cliff Note version, but I want to hear basically why you chose the major you chose in college, what you were thinking when you chose that major, and walk me through your work experience from the time you graduated. And I want to hear what they've done and how they've done it. I really want to hear their decision-making along the way. And then I really want to get much more granular in the last 5 years, and really most granular in the last 12 months, and then working backwards, so the last 5 years is really where I'm focused. And through the process of them telling their story, which is what they're doing, I'm assessing skill, I'm assessing aptitude, I'm assessing fit based on my claims, because by the time I'm doing an interview, I probably have a position that I'm interested in talking to them about. And the accomplishment piece is, again, in that last, really important. Tell me what your goals and objectives are for this year, for 2016. And it's for any job in the staffing industry. Keep in mind, all of the searches that we're doing are staffing industry specific. All the candidates we're talking to have staffing industry experience. So I want to know, what are your goals for 2016? How are you tracking to those goals? If you are exceeding those goals, what are you doing? Tell me how you are exceeding goals like you are. If you're not, well, tell me about that too. And there can be lots of good reasons why people aren't meeting goals for the year, but you need to hear the story, and you need to collaborate that with referencing. You need to collaborate that with compensation, compensation information. So there are a couple of states, Massachusetts and California, that have got legislation pending, and it could be more than pending. So you need to, if you're doing business in the states, you need to, you probably know more about this than I do, but there's legislation pending that will limit interviewers from asking candidates about current or past compensation. But at Mee Derby, we do ask, except for those state compensation information. So I want to know what your base salary is. I want to know what you're tracking for 2016. I want to know how your commission is structured and how it's paid out. And I actually want to do that for 2015. What was your W-2? What was your base? How was your commission or bonus structured? And And I want to do that in 2014. I think we do 2 to 3 years of background in terms of W-2 information. It is our client's prerogative, and it is your prerogative to ask for W-2 verification if you want to. You know, I think W-2 verification kind of goes in and out of we see it. Frankly, I have not seen a lot of W-2 verification of recent. There have been times in the past where I've seen a lot of W-2 verification. In your own organization, you have to figure out what that interview process is going to look like. Are you going to do most of our clients do a first level phone call, and then they will start scheduling you in person. And it is rare, it is most common that there are several interviews, and there are different people involved in the interview process. And at times, I've seen companies or candidates to do special projects. I've seen them come in and actually do some observations. I've seen candidates be invited to a lunch or a dinner. As a matter of fact, I'm a huge advocate of getting a candidate out for a meal so you can really, everybody takes off their interview faces and you get to know the other person. I had a client say to me last week, well, I like to take them out for meals. I want to see how they interact with the wait staff. I want to see their table manners. I want to see how they conduct themselves because we do a lot of dining of clients and candidates. Again, I like to get to know the person. And I find a meal, getting them out of the office to a really productive way. But every company has got a different interview process. We're doing work with a very large employer that does 2 levels of phone screen and then brings the candidate in for a 4 to 8 hour interview with 45-minute structured interviews over the course of that 4 to 8 hours. And they do that for every candidate. And then they have KPIs around, you know, we will have a decision made within 2 days from the time that candidate has finished that final interview. So have a process, stick to the process. You know, hiring to your corporate culture is something, it's the magic fit. I see that in air quotes. Everybody is looking for the fit. But it's really hard, it's very subjective to define fit. And there are, I think more and more companies are defining their culture, they're defining their values, and I'm seeing more companies actually interviewing to their culture and interviewing to their values. We have one client who has actually established 14 leadership principles, and they interview to those 14 leadership principles. They go beyond just interviewing for those leadership principles. They then put those leadership principles into place, and they run their company, and they manage the organization tied to those leadership principles. It's very interesting because they end up having a big organization full of people who have similar values around things like sense of urgency, entrepreneurship, people who take ownership, have a quest for ongoing learning and knowledge. But it starts with defining what that corporate culture is. And that corporate culture also then feeds the office environment. And every office environment is so unique. My company is actually a virtual company. We went virtual in 2010. And a person who wants to work in a virtual office is a very different person that is going to be going into a branch office every day. You know, I say my company is totally virtual. Most of us are in the DC metro area, and we do co-office, but we have a total flexible kind of work schedule so that. But again, when I went from having an office around the corner from the White House to having an office basically home-based recruiters, that did not work for everybody. But I've got a team of people today that want to work in this kind of office environment, and frankly, it's really been a contributing factor to our tenure of 12 years plus, or average tenure of the organization, 12 years plus. Okay, I'm just going to check out those assessments for a minute. Some companies use them. Matter of fact, just like W-2 verification, they kind of go in and out of favor. Some companies use pre-employment assessments. The big thing is if you're going to use them, you've got to use them for every candidate. You cannot be selective or subjective on who you're going to ask to do an assessment. We do not advocate them, but in companies that use them, we don't advocate them one way or the other. And we've used assessments internally for hiring. But it's one piece of the puzzle. Never use it as a reason to hire or not hire someone. And more of them are behavioral in the staffing industry. Some of them are aptitude-based. Some of them are both. And I've got a list here of some of the ones that we see most frequently. Peak, Rembrandt, Wonderlic is both, well as aptitude and behavioral. So this is not meant to be a definitive list, nor an advocation of or not. Also process. Okay, so you've got the candidates. You've done the recruiting, you've done the interviewing, you've done the assessment. You are at what I call pre-offer stage. Pre-offer stage is the time where you want to craft an offer to candidates to accept. You've done all your homework. You probably at this point are about doing your references, and so you do want to have a reference check process. And most of our clients do both reference checks and background checks. Background checks tend to be an automated process, education, criminal history. And they can be more than that. The reference process is, again, something that's controversial often, but most companies will not do more than confirm, dates of employment. But every company in the staffing industry wants more than that, and so candidates need to. I believe, and I should just preface the thing. I believe that most of our clients want candidates to provide personal references that are professional, that are direct supervisory whenever possible. We know that they cannot, and candidates are not really willing to, or not willing to, put their own current jobs in jeopardy, so they probably can't use their current manager, but they should be able to use their previous manager. And they should be able to identify individuals in their current company that they can take into their confidence, or someone who's left the organization who can speak to their accomplishments and their experience. We find that we do referencing, so we provide to our clients, but most of our clients don't do their own referencing. They can use the process. We advocate having a really tight offer process. And so even ahead of offer, which I call pre-offer, you're reviewing relevant information. And you've probably talked about compensation before you get to this point, but certainly by this point you are talking about the goals and objectives of the position and how the compensation is aligned with those goals and expectations. You're going to be talking about benefits. I mean, at Mee Derby, we will often do a benefits analysis of what the candidate currently has and compare to what our client has, because there can often be, benefits have real dollar values to them, and often we're having to negotiate, weeks of vacation or additional dollars if the healthcare plan happens to be more expensive than the companies are going to. I've got a slide here on benefits in a minute. But you want to be thorough, and you want to put things in writing, and you need to put as much detail in writing as you possibly can. Commission plan details need to be in writing, your employment agreement. If you have one, and most companies do, this is where the employment agreement is reviewed. Your benefits need to be thorough if there's relocation, or some companies offer equity or some kind of compensation around equity. All of this, the offer process where all of this is reviewed. The offer is made often in verbally at first, and then the written offer with all of these details. Now, we do recommend that you stay really close to the candidates during this process, because inevitably, if they're interviewing with you, they're probably interviewing other places, and they're probably leaving a job. And so you're also competing with other possible offers, and you're competing with the current company. And so we counter. I've never seen it so tight for our talent in the staffing industry ever. And we have to counter offer. We have to cover counter time and time again. And frankly, it's the employer's responsibility to do so too. And once a candidate has accepted, stay as close to that candidate through the resignation process, because and I mean, get together for a meal, get them some of your training materials, have them meet with some of the other people in the organization, keep in close touch. You don't want, you invested a lot of time and energy at this point. You want them in your organization. You don't want to lose them to a counteroffer or to another position. And believe me, we see it happening way too often. And along with that, create a fun onboarding process. make sure that you are organized on their first day, that they've got a computer, that they've got their phone, that they've got all of it, that they've got business cards, they've got business cards printed, they need to have everything together. It's disheartening to somebody who starts a new job, and they don't have their technology in place. But make it fun. Have a team dinner. Have, the first week, maybe somebody takes them out to lunch every day that week. There's no reason why, particularly in a full office, that new person shouldn't have, I think they should have the one-on-one time. Everybody in the office. It's all about creating relationships in a really positive onboarding process. Consider a mentor-mentee relationship. We see companies doing that. It's a lot of fun, and both the mentor and the mentee get a lot of benefit from that relationship. Attract and retain, this is around benefits. And we are seeing a resurgence of an importance around benefits, and I'm sure it has everything to do with how tight the talent market is. I am a big believer, I've mentioned it around Mee Derby, that flexible work hours or alternative work schedules, virtual officing, when it comes to hiring employees for life, and if that is something that you want to do in your organization, people have lives. They have children, they have aging parents, they have all kinds of things. They have graduate school, they have all kinds of things that they need to, that we as employers need to be able to accommodate if you are really looking for people to stay with you for a long time. And there's a lot written about millennials and what millennials want and what millennials need, and percentage of millennials in the workforce of the year 2020. This is not a millennial session, but I do believe that these are some of the things that we are going to, if you're not considering today, you're going to considering in the future. We're seeing a real resurgence in the importance of education and training and leadership development. And, some of these other things are kind of pretty standard operating, healthcare, short and long-term disability, life insurance. 401k, again, if you're looking for people to stay with you for a long time, there's 401ks that you contribute to, there's 401ks that you don't contribute to. There's a resurgence in pension plans. That's even been in the debates recently. More companies offering pension plans as retention tools. We went to a pension, Mee Derby, as small as we've been, we've had a 401k that we've contributed to for a very long time, and we instituted a pension plan, and we're in our third year now. Frankly, I think it's doing the right thing for the employees. I think all these things is doing the right thing for employees to keep them for the long term. And employee engagement. There's so much being talked about in terms of employee engagement today. The importance of corporate social responsibility programs. But really it's having fun. We work hard, but we really have fun at our work. And the last bullet point here is probably the most important bullet point, and that is creating an environment of appreciation for your team and saying thank you and celebrating the small things. I mean, in my organization, as silly as this is, years ago one of my employees gave me a bell, and we ring the bell when we have a placement. And my team is virtual, so we have a weekly staff meeting. We're ringing the bell on the staff meeting for placements that happened in the last week, but we're on email and in Bullhorn all day, every day. So every time there's a placement, we are sending out a celebratory email with bells ringing and confetti flying, just to celebrate those small wins. And everybody gets excited about it. Recognizing, company anniversaries and birthdays, and having a fun outing and creating an environment where people want to be, because we spend so much of our time at work and with our colleagues. We want to have fun. And the staffing industry tends to be an industry that attracts people who like to have fun. We're highly social people. We are generally extroverts, and experts like to have fun. Everybody likes to have fun. So I'm going to talk about compensation. I know I've only got 2 more minutes, and so David, I know that you probably have you may have some questions. I don't know, you can interrupt me at any time, but I'm going to go fast through comp, and I am available to talk about any of these things, including compensation offline, for anybody that might be interested. So staffing industry, most compensation plans, whether it's recruiter, sales, manager, or up the food chain, is a base. And a sales and recruiter generally has a commission, and that commission is generally paid monthly. And it's generally tied to gross profit or gross margin. And then as you get into management, we see bonus on company, could be branch performance, could be regional performance, could be company performance. And a producing manager might have both a commission tied to individual performance, sales or recruiting, and a bonus. But compensation is generally performance-based, and the performance is individual performance, and it's also team performance. Individual, again, being commission-driven, team being the bonus piece. We are finding, particularly in a really tight talent market, more and more companies needing to pay a guarantee or a draw to bring somebody into the organization. So, for example, I'm interested in hiring a salesperson. They're making their base salary plus their monthly commission. They're going to walk away from that monthly commission, but if they're going to join your organization, you may need to pay them a guarantee or a draw to keep them full for some period of time, maybe 3 to 6 months generally, probably closer to 6. It takes a little bit of time for people to ramp. But it's very hard to make a hire of an experienced staffing professional without paying a guarantee or a draw. Some of the factors that influence compensation: industry vertical. The professional services verticals traditionally pay higher, both on base salary and generally have a higher commission opportunity in commercial staffing. Not unusual for somebody to come into the staffing industry on the commercial side and then evolve on the professional side. I'll mention that anybody who is a corporate member of staffing industry analyst, there is a compensation tool. They call it compensation estimator. Probably the best tool I've ever seen for staffing industry compensation, and you can slice and dice it in many, many ways. It is tied to job title, geography, industry vertical, so use that as a tool. Bullhorn also has done some compensation surveys that you can find on their website. Back to factors that influence revenue managed, the bigger the P&L, typically the bigger the compensation package, both a plus bonus. How many markets? You know, a single branch versus a region versus a multi-state region. The bigger the market, the bigger the comp. Interesting, publicly traded companies are often more handcuffed. They often have got some very specific guidelines that they have to work within when they are hiring around compensation. So in some cases, I see privately held companies being able to be more aggressive on comp. And that's the final bullet point too, the size firm. I mean, we do see some standardized compensation in the larger organizations. Sorry, you guys, really. Okay, what do candidates want? Candidates today in this market are primarily moving because of an increased opportunity. They're not looking to make a vertical. They're not looking to come do exactly the same thing in your company that they're doing somewhere else. They need to see career elevation. They need to see career opportunity, and they need to see compensation opportunity. They need to see cultural alignment. They do want to feel like this is a good fit for them in joining their next firm. It's very rare for a candidate to make a job change where they're not getting a base increase. They are looking for strong benefit packages. Uncapped commissions, please do not. I mean, let me just say that candidates prefer comp plans that are not capped, commission plans that are not capped. Work-life balance is an important consideration, and candidates really prefer non-competes. And if somebody's coming to you with industry experience, then they may look to negotiate the non-compete or the non-solicit. They don't want comp plans that are not aligned with the market. And I know that, as a small business, I've had to occasionally look to the market and talk to my friends that I've made through the American Staffing Association to benchmark my comp plan and make sure that it is aligned with the market and also with our personal or company goals and values. Candidates don't want complicated commission plans. There are more complicated commission plans out there than ought to be. Some candidates can't even speak to what their comp plan looks like. It's so complicated. Do not pay commissions late, you guys. It's a reason why somebody will consider making a job change if they're not being paid on time. And again, they don't want non-competes. They prefer non-solicit. Okay, David, I'm having a problem scrolling. Okay, employers want employees who are hungry and commission-driven. This is a performance-driven environment where most compensation plans are leveraged and tied to performance. And most employers want employees who are going to be focused on driving their commission. If they're building their commission pipeline, they're building their business. And they want employees that are going to focus on how to drive their commission. They want a proven track record. They also want cultural alignment. They also want candidates who can speak to their numbers. So, you know, do not hesitate when you are interviewing candidates to ask the candidate to speak to their specific sales or recruiting or profit and loss numbers. I'm sorry, you guys. There we go. Hold on. Okay, so again, compensation. We suggest that you, as management, review your compensation plans regularly and benchmark them against your friendly competitors. And get to know those friendly competitors through getting involved with your local ASA chapter or the ASA national chapter. You can track candidate compensation when you interview people. That's a great way of getting a real bead on what people are making in your market. And consider being flexible on compensation. I think the companies that are hiring the candidates they want to right now are flexible on comp to attract the best talent. And please don't hesitate to talk compensation several times when you're interviewing. Understand the W-2 history for the last 3 years, and consider asking for W-2 verification if that is something that's important to you. Make sure to communicate your plan clearly and in writing. Keep it simple and stay on time. Do not mess with people's money. So a couple of high-level recommendations. Consider hiring, building an internal hiring talent strategy in this very competitive war for talent and staffing. Hold on to your internal team. Keep re-recruiting them. The LinkedIn research shows us that 80% of staffing industry, people that are in the staffing industry, will consider new opportunities. And consider hiring that recent college graduate or people from outside the industry. And again, staffing is a career.net is a resource at the American Staffing Association. Again, doing some research about that. So I've used my hour. I appreciate your time. And David, if there are any questions, send them over.
All right, thanks, Robin. That was terrific. Few questions along the way, and a few I jotted down myself. So I kind of want to go back to the beginning, and when you were comparing hiring from within the industry versus hiring from outside the industry, in your experience, is one better than the other?
Well, in my experience, I mean, so keep in mind, my company is a specialty search firm for the staffing industry. So people come to Me Derby because they want to hire a staffing industry professional. I rarely, if ever, have somebody call me up and say, hey, listen, I'm looking to hire somebody from outside the industry for our industry. They are different strategies. And it's, frankly, I think important to have both. I was talking to the VP of Global Talent Acquisition at one of the largest staffing companies today. And she said, we need to end our reliance on hiring people only from the industry and start building our own. Manufacturing talent is how Scott Winthrop talked about it in his most recent newsletter. So it's important to have both. It's important to have both. There are not enough people with industry experience, but then again, there are some positions that you really would be hard-pressed to hire somebody that doesn't have industry experience.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of the interviewing process, I know a lot of staffing companies do things very differently, and again, focusing more on internal positions, like not senior management, but recruiters, salespeople. How many rounds of interviews do companies ideally go through, and how different and structured should they be at each stage?
Right. So because it is such a tight talent market, I encourage you to keep your interview process short. The longer you've got a candidate in the interview process, the higher the likelihood they're taking another job. You will lose candidates if you don't move quickly. Speed to hire. So I don't, for a salesperson, well, for a recruiter or salesperson, you should be able to get it done in 3 interviews. And it's not going to happen in 1, and it's probably not going to happen in 2. Could it happen in 2? Yes. So that first interview is a telephone interview with a hiring manager. The second interview is an in-person interview. The hiring manager is probably going to do that interview. And possibly someone else. It depends on the size of your organization. In my company, you know, I'm doing the first level interview or my recruiting manager is. But if she does the first, I'm doing the second, and vice versa. You know, we will also have an interview with other people doing the job in the company. Because I told you we're pretty virtual. I will fly somebody in so they have an opportunity to meet the team, have an opportunity to see our technology, see our process, see our support. Now I've just told you about 4 levels, right? It really, I think the big takeaway here is keep it as concise as possible. And each person who interviews should take a different part of the interview process. I mentioned one of my clients. Earlier who does 2 on the phone screen and then brings them in. Mm-hmm. And then they bring them in with 4 to 8 45-minute long interviews, segments, each person taking a different segment. And in that particular company, the 2 telephone interviews are around skill, experience, through the track record. And then the in-person is taking each one of the company goals and leadership principles and interviewing to those goals and leadership principles.
Good stuff.
So try not to have each person that's interviewing do the same interview, right? And not everybody needs to do a chronological interview. And doing some behavioral interviewing questions is really important when you're talking about people that have industry experience. Tell me about a time. And really, you could come up with behavioral questions ahead of time, and then if you know there are 2 or 3 people that are in the interview process, have one person do this, you know, do these 3, the next person do these 3, and the next person do these 3, and then get together and share the information as part of the decision-making process to either, you know, make a hire or not, or make an offer or not.
Okay, excellent. I just got a couple final questions. And since you just described a company that has a really good process for how they break apart the interview, what are some of the things that you see most often that staffing firms do wrong in their hiring?
Well, I think we're all guilty if there are 3 people interviewing of asking the same questions, right? If you haven't like set a structure or process up ahead of time, then you're probably asking the same thing over and over again. Because you do need to get a sense for where the person's come from and what they've done, what they've accomplished. But you know, everybody doesn't need to go through a comp history, for example. We all have to make the best decision with the information we have. And so not having a process contributes to, I think it contributes to poor hires. And each part of the process is important. So the interview process is important. The reference checking process is important. That, you know, for me, getting that person, or for my person I talked to last week, getting that person out of the office and into, you know, an off-site meal is important. Because each step of the way, you're assessing the individual. I've seen companies give like projects, like a sales project or a recruiting project. I've done that myself. You know, I'm looking to hire a XYZ. Here is the job description. We all have access to your, you know, just the LinkedIn research. That you come back to me with a list of 10 candidates that you have found on LinkedIn that fit this position that I'm recruiting for. See what you can do, and see. Have them walk you through their process and why they thought these 10 people were possible candidates or potential candidates, or what their fit looked like.
Excellent.
I don't think I answered that question. But I think we all struggle making good hires.
No, I think
all of
there's
us.
some really good tips, Robin. And the last one is kind of going into the latter part of your presentation and all the options for compensation. And I know for a lot of people on today's call, they may be from smaller organizations that are competing with the bigger organizations who may have deeper pockets or richer benefits. So what's the best way for a small firm to compete with the big guys?
Well, I think small companies can actually be more competitive on compensation than the big guys. I think they can be potentially less competitive on the benefits, but again, I mean, I at Mee Derby have created a really rich benefit plan because I knew I was going to have to compete not only with big people, big companies, but also I'm looking to hire people for the long term. So I want it to support my employee for the long run, so they're not thinking they have to go someplace else to get a 401k, to get a pension plan, to get whatever the case may be. I think your small company has the possibility, and I think a lot of small companies are doing a really good job of building comp plans that are more aggressive than the big company. I think the small company has the limitation of a small company just doesn't have a huge ladder to climb. I mean, at Mee Derby, there is no big ladder to climb there. So each person has to get really excited about the job they're doing, and they need to be compensated competitively, and they need to be supported in an extraordinary fashion, and they have to love what they do and love the organization they're doing for, and they got to love their coworkers. And that's how you compete with the big company. So honestly, a big organization is not a better organization in the staffing industry. We can provide the same kind of comp plans and the same kind of benefit plans just about, and can offer a lot more of a personalized experience than working for a large company. And I'm happy to talk to anybody on any of these subjects offline.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm sure I know we can't hear everybody, but I have a feeling there was a lot of cheering at that last answer. Well, Robin, I want to thank you very much. This was an awesome presentation, very informative. We've had a couple people who said, where can I get the slides? And they are available on the lunchwithhaley.com website. So you can now go to the webinars on demand, and you'll be able to download this recording and the slides. The recording should be available next week.